quick announcement at the end of the video. Make sure to watch till the end. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of MCreator Lore. So today what we're going to be working on is basically getting a crusher machine set up so we can get the copper dust and stuff, which we'll be using for refining. Now this will be a low level tier basically device, so it won't actually use any energy or anything like that. I do plan on adding forge energy in the future and stuff, so I have a few different types of textures here that I created, and we'll be using that today. So I needed to go to the crafting tab and just create a new folder here to make the make it a little bit more organized. And then what I went in here and I created the block itself, and then I could start working on actually setting up the textures for the UV map. So once I got the texture base set in, I basically started adjusting the front and top texture, which I wanted for those two parts, and then the rest are just basically the default side texture. Other than that, I didn't need to worry about too much. I did set rotation up later on because I forgot to do that in that part, but everything else here is fine. Now I wanted to put it under the blocks tab for now. We might have one for devices in the future, but for the moment I'm not too worried about actually having everything mixed in there. We'll be organizing it a little bit more later on, but as we get more blocks and stuff, we'll be able to organize it. But at the moment it's alright the way it is. So I was gonna basically set the pick tool and everything like that for this to the what do you call it, pickaxe, and for a stone tool. That should be fine enough for this kind of machine. And I wanted the texture to be quartz, so I was trying to find quartz in this list for the map color, and I think that's the one that we used for marble. I had to double check to get the marble map color, so I ended up going into the raw and then checking, and it was definitely quartz, so I needed to grab the quartz one. And then once I did that, I wasn't going to add any flammability properties or anything like that. Not too worried about it at the moment for that particular setting. We might add with the electrical tools like the machines and stuff, we might add a feature for animation for when it's burning or something like that on fire, but that will have to come later on. And let's see here, I needed the inventory to have 2 slots, one for an input and one for an output, and I was just seeing if there was anything else that I really needed to do on this tab, and I'm just like, okay, well, we'll still need an inventory, so I'll have to come back here. And I was thinking about the comparator output and the drop if not bound to inventory, so I left those 2 blocks, and we needed to create a tick update for the thing, so I needed to enable the tick for the procedure or the block tick rate. So going back to the crusher and then going into here, I needed to create the procedure. And with this particular procedure, I wanted it to be a little bit more dynamic for what kind of content I can put in here. So what I needed to do was basically use some string variables as well as some other things. Now I was going to test for the block, but then I realized I didn't actually need to do that because we're running it from the block tick update itself. So what I ended up doing was I first wanted to basically create a simple variable for if the block is well, I think I was still trying to figure out how I could pass all this over to a block variable, but I didn't even need the block variable. And then once I created that, I was like, oh, you know what, I probably don't even need this. So what I ended up doing was I just scrapped that part, and I believe I moved on to working on some sort of timer or something like that. So I deleted that variable, and I deleted these parts here because we don't actually need those. What we do need is we need a MBT variable for our our crushing time, and we're going to need to test if there is an item in the particular inventory. So I went with a tag, I believe. So I was trying to find a tag here, and I always forget that it's near the top, but it's like always near the top when I'm looking for it. But we're gonna have to grab the one that's right at the top here. And then what I needed to do was get the slot inventory information from the block itself. So we're going to get it from slot 0. And we don't actually need to link it up for a specific test like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to test if that slot is in a specific variable. So we're going to go, and this was my second mistake. This was, I typed CCTV Craft instead of Tales of Biomes because I've been working on that mod for a while. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time why it wasn't working when I was testing in game. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I think I know the reason now. And then I discovered that I messed up here. So that was kind of like a funny thing because it was just like a slip because I wasn't used to working on Tale of Biomes. I haven't really worked on it off camera for a while. So I wasn't sure what the ID was. And I just went to my default mod that I've been working on lately. So it took me a couple attempts to figure out a good name for the tag here. I wanted something that would allow all ore in that particular group to be detected, and we want that because we're going to make sure that the timer gets set or starts running and also stops when there is no ore in that particular thing, right? So the next thing that I wanted to do was I was going to do a bunch of these, one for pure ore, one impure, and then one for mixed. But I decided later on that I was probably going to just go with one test and then use variable names, not variable, but the registry to get the other parts for the detection for the copper and stuff like that. So what I ended up doing was this is one valid way of doing it, but we didn't really need all this these variables. So I tried making it as compact as possible while still providing a little bit more for the testing and stuff like that. So I wanted to know if the block is like the input of the block, and I'm going to get the variable because we're using this variable multiple times, so I'm trying to compact it down as much as I can and just store that to memory, because then we don't need to keep reading it each time the variable is, or the some sort of condition is basically loaded. So once I've done that, I could basically go ahead and I was thinking about actually, I think at this part, basically getting the timer set up and possibly just doing a raw resource of some sort. I was thinking about going with like CCTV Craft. I know it's still CCTV Craft. I didn't clue in for the longest time, so but something like raw ore or something like that. And then I went with like the crush time for the timer for basically how long it will take to smelt all that. And then what we wanted to do is test if that timer is set to, I believe it was 0. So I needed to find a number block, go under math and grab one of those. So yeah, if it's 0, we want to make sure that it'll run the script. Or we could go with like 32 or something like that. It depends on how we set up our timer too. So if we want it to increase, then we'll basically go ahead and set the timer variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to count upwards rather than downwards, because then we can set the time there and we don't need to worry about it. So from there, what we're going to do is we're going to copy the crush time, and then we're going to increase this value, and then we're going to increase this by 1, and we're going to get that crush value again from the MBT. And we're also using this variable quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this over to a local variable as well, so we don't need to keep reading from the block either. And then we're going to put that right about here, and then we're just going to copy that variable over. So it basically improves the reading of the procedure a little bit more. So we're going to increase that by 1, and then we can go ahead and make an else statement on the outside of this particular procedure. And what we're going to do instead is if this value, the or, is not in the class or the tag here, what we're going to do is we're just going to set the time back to 0. So basically it will go ahead and reset the timer so it doesn't continue smelting. Now eventually I want to create a crushing animation or some sort of icon to show the progress of it actually being crushed. I think I settled for like 20 ticks, so that's about 1 second each. So we would have to create some sort of bar for that particular thing. But basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a string, and I'm going to pass over the variable from the input, and we're going to just call this registry input, or pardon me, string at registry or input registry. We're going to set this as a string because this is what the output of this registry is. We're going to copy that over. And now what I wanted to do with this was originally just basically swap out the item, but then I realized the item itself is not configured greatly for the naming. So I can't easily just replace one word. I would have to shift all this stuff over and stuff to actually create the new type of item, which is a little bit more of a hassle than anything. So I decided for a different approach. The first thing what I wanted to do was actually get the test if there was a word in that particular registry, so something like copper, or we could do aluminum, and then we could basically output the recipe based on that particular thing. So we'll still have to add additional support for it, but like for different materials, but for mods that have different types, as long as they have 2 words in it, pure, impure, and mixed, as well as the material type, so in this case copper, what we can do is we can basically get the name of the registry in that particular registry, and we can know if it should output the type of item for dust. So it makes a little bit of sense when I start putting all this together. So basically what I wanted to do originally was just get the registry and change it around, but then I noticed that it wouldn't work because I needed to actually test it. And I just looked at the items itself and checked to see if there was really any way I could do that. So I was going to get the registry output name, and I wasn't sure really how to do this, but I needed to know about the items first. So like I said, I went to the items folder, and I went into the resources, and then the I believe it was the ores, copper, and then dust. And then I noticed that, okay, the dust has pure and then dust at the end, and then there was the raw and then copper at the end. So it was like almost a completely flipped around pattern of words. So it would have been really hard to work into changing the registry. It would be possible. It's just, I mean, it's kind of a hassle to actually change all that. So what I ended up doing was I just basically tested if there was a specific word in that particular registry, which works just as well, right? As long as the mod doesn't have something like copper or impure in the namespace, it should work just fine. So what I ended up doing was basically going ahead and deleting all that. We didn't need that variable as well, but I think I deleted that after. And I wanted to test if the thing contains a specific word. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our registry variable. So what we wanted to do is get the registry variable here and test for the word that we want to basically know if it's in there. So in this case, I want to know if it's copper. And once we have that particular test here, what we can do is we can start testing for a few other things. So basically what I'm going to do is we're going to go to Minecraft components, and we're going to go ahead and set our dust texture or dust items to this particular one. So what I want to do is go with the unpure, and then I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to go with the mixed, and needed to find it, and then we need to go with the pure, which should be right at the end here. So that's basically the first step that I did. And then what I needed to do was I needed to go ahead and replace all those particular blocks with the tags in the middle. And what I ended up doing was I think I went with the copper on the exterior, and then I just went with mixed, impure, and pure for the inner one. So I had to like figure out what I was going to actually do with that, because I wanted to add support for the thing, but I was like looking at the tags and going, well, that's a lot of tags for just testing for one ore. So I figured what I would end up doing was just going ahead and basically just grabbing the type of resource and putting it like this. And then that way what we can do is we can just test for the ore or the mixed type or whatever for the what do you call it, the actual variable. And this actually is more compact than doing it the other way, because we don't need to worry about all the other technical details and stuff like that for changing the registry. And then if the registry isn't the same, then it won't work. But this way, we're just testing if the registry has those letters and stuff in it, like the words. So that's going to be a little bit more compact, because we don't need to have it set a very specific way. So it's better than doing it the other way, personally. But then we needed to remove the block or the item from the 0 slot. And what we need to do is we need to get the item count in the output slot. And we need to test if the value of that slot is basically less than or equal to the maximum stack size. So I'm not sure what the stack size currently is for this. I think it's like 64, so we don't need to worry about it too much for the dust part. If we're working with other items in the future, then we might want to consider adding a maximum stack size variable. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to test if the variable is empty for the output. And then what we're going to do is we're going to test for the type of dust in that slot. And we want to test if that number is equal to or less than basically 63, which is one below the slot number. So if it is below that number, we're going to just add one dust to the output slot, and then we're testing for an empty item stack for that particular part. So once we've done that, what I can do is I can merge the copper down into one group. So basically we're going to add an AND statement for that, and we're going to move this over for here, and then we're going to go ahead and do that for the other ones as well. So this way we'll be able to test for multiple different types of ore and stuff later on, and we don't need to worry about actually getting the specific type. We can just copy this part over. We can even make this a little bit more compact and put them into their own procedures for basically running it too, which might be a little bit more better for actually doing the ore at a larger scale of production. So the last thing that we needed to do was we needed to update this variable, and we're going to basically increase the output slot value by 1 and increase that number. So basically we're going to get the output slot and increase that by 1, and then we're going to set our item through the thing there, so we know exactly which item to do. So that's basically what I did for there, and then I just compacted this down a little bit more so it's in line, so it's a little easier to read when you're viewing it like a strip, and that should work. I did test it, and when I came back, I couldn't actually, I found that the CCTV variable was still set, so I needed to create that variable first, but I created it under the mod namespace, and that's why it wasn't working, because it wasn't CCTV. So basically I fixed this up, and I needed to change the variable, so I'm just going with raw or for this one. And then I needed to create the variable itself, and I just created I noticed that there was some other inconsistencies in here. I'm not sure what happened, but I thought I had all the dust added to their own tags and stuff like that, so we might need to go back and double check to make sure everything's set up for the ore and stuff. But I did add the blocks as well, and I wasn't sure why the impure ones weren't added, so it was just interesting because I wasn't sure why. So I added them back just to be sure, and I scrolled down just to make sure that everything else was set up for the ore at least. And then I went ahead and created the tag. So I just basically put this under the mod namespace. It's under items, and then we just used raw ore. And then what we needed to do was add our raw ore types to this particular variable, so all of them. And then what we could do is, after I went in there and tested, I noticed that it wasn't actually working, so I was trying to figure out what was causing the issue. And everything looked fine. I wasn't seeing any issues, and then I discovered the CCTV craft variable was the wrong namespace, so I was just making sure that we could actually test this a little bit quicker. So it was going to set the variable to 1 for the tick update, and then I also double checked to make sure the timer was enabled. And what I wanted to do for the inventory was make sure that the slots were a little bit more even, so I wanted to kind of put them somewhere in the center here, and I'm just aligning them up with the center here, and we're going to have our input slot there. And then we'll do something in the middle in the future for like an animation or something like that. Then our output slot will be here, and then I'm just going to give it a name for the GUI so we know what inventory we're in. And I'm just going to call it Crusher for now. And that should be good enough for what we need. And then I need to set up the GUI for the block. So again, make sure the tick update's set to 1. And we're going to set our GUI linked here, and click that box to make sure that it's bound to it. And then when I was in here, we can see we got the rotation set up. I made sure to add that in after. So like I said before, I wanted to make sure that we could actually do that. So after I figured out the CCTV variable problem, I was able to test this. So I was just testing the ore to make sure that it was basically functional. And once I did that, I could basically go ahead and just make sure that all the dust was carrying over to 64, and it was, so that's great. And we have all different types of dust versions, so now we'll be able to use this in our crafting for the actual blocks themselves, which will help with later on developing other blocks and stuff for the machines. So looking over the thing, I needed the Tales of Biomes tag up here. I just kept it with the raw resource or raw ore. And I am setting the timer to 20 now. This will be 1 second for each crafting, so 20 ticks per second. And other than that, all the other things are the same. I'm just going to minimize these so it's a little bit more compact. And yeah, so I just needed to make sure that the Tales of Biomes thing was here, and that I also needed to reset the variable for the crush time after that particular cycle reaches 20. So I added that particular variable as well there at the bottom of the script when it's crafting the item. So as you can see, that's basically what I did there. And yeah, it basically works. So that's all we needed to do, and we're good for that particular part. I have this friend that has their own server hosting company, and they have the lowest prices in the server hosting community, and they've given me a promo code to give to you guys. So if you want to get a good deal for the first month, then you can use the promo code Northwest for 45% off your first month. Offer expires July 19th, 2034. The link to their site is in the description. Alright, so outside of that, we got the timer set up a little bit slower, and I'm pretty happy with the progress that we made. Let me know in the comments what you think of the video, if you learned anything new, and basically if you have any suggestions for the future. Thanks for watching. Peace out.